Hello, hello. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Yes, welcome back, gang. It is our favorite time of the week. We get to learn, we get to have fun. I'm excited. I get excited every Wednesday. But if this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, did you feel that passion? I'm ready. I'm ready to be inspired today by today's guest.
Oh, well, you know what? That is going to happen guaranteed. So let's go ahead and get started today. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Okay, coming up next week is Ask Lori Anything. So we can have a conversation about any topic that you would like to talk about. I'm going to mention something today in Lori's Corner we can chat about. And then I've got a full June lineup, but I wanted to already mention that June 3rd, Dahlia, our favorite from DF Accounting Services is coming on. And I've been getting a lot of questions about what type of auditing. And when I say auditing QuickBooks, I'm saying going into your reports, running them, take a look at them. I know I've talked about it. Dahlia's talked about it. A lot of your reports are not correct, but you don't even know what to look for. So I asked Dahlia to come on and just kind of say, run these reports, look for this. This is what you check. This is what you consider when you're doing this, as kind of like a clean up our QuickBooks meeting. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about next week. Okay, today's Lori Corner. Here we go. So it's time for Lori's Corner. Today, I want to share one of my favorite Lori statements that I make. And I say this all the time. I teach it in every financial class I do. It's very simple, but it's powerful. Okay, you ready? You heard it first from Lori. If you touch it, there's a cost. If you do it, there's a cost. I know many of you have heard me say that before, but I want to bring it up and give you more of an explanation behind it. Okay, this in Lori's world, what I believe, this one concept is responsible for more small business struggles and even failures than almost anything else, okay? Especially when companies start to grow. Here's what happens, guys. So in the very beginning, it's just you sometimes working out of your home where you have a small, tiny team. You don't put a dollar value on your time. You don't account for your cell phone use, your computer, your internet, or any of the tools you're using. You just don't account for them. What you do is you tell yourself, I already pay for that personally. It doesn't really count as a business expense. I'm going to, pay for it when the company grows. I hear this all the time. But here's the problem, guys. You build your entire pricing and cost structure as if those things are free. Oh, they're free. They're always going to be free. Then the business grows. You get busy. You may need to hire somebody to take over the work you've been doing. Suddenly you realize the company has never been charged for your time or equipment. Your pricing was built on an incomplete cost picture, okay? That's when cash flow problems show up. You think you're borrowing money to grow, but what you're really, really doing is you're borrowing money to cover hidden losses. That's what you're doing. Losses that were already baked into your cost structure from day one. So the truth is, if your company can't afford to pay you for the work you do and can't afford the equipment you use, it will never be able to afford to hire someone else or buy the right tools later. Now, sometimes you can't pay yourself back on this, but if you don't put it into the cost structure, it'll show up later as a huge problem. I see this in probably, I'd say about 98% of the small companies I work with. Most small business advisors never talk about this CFO level concept, but it's one of the biggest reasons so many owners feel stuck and end up in debt they thought was growth money, but it's not. So next week on Ask Lori Anything, I'll go in deeper on this. But here's the bottom line. You need to start treating your time and your tools like real business expenses right now, even if you're a one-person show, okay? When you build your pricing and forecast with the full cost picture, you set your company up to grow profitably instead of just growing broke, okay? We want to grow the company. We don't want to grow broke. And I see too much of it. You got this. A little awareness now saves a lot of heartache later. Okay, everybody, let's jump into today's show. Today, I'm very excited to have back on the show Diana Bernal. She's a public speaker, leadership coach, and author of Career with Intention, your guide to find clarity, confidence, and courage for your next move. Now, here's the story. For years, Diana wondered what it would take to work for herself. I know many of you have asked that question, and many of you may be asking that question now. The idea kept surfacing and was often encouraged by others, but only resulted in half-finished drafts that stayed in her what if folder. Now, many of you have the what if folder. Then in 2019, a reality check changed everything. Okay, Diana, you've got to fill in a whole lot of information here. A lot of things came out of that. Welcome back to the show. So excited to have Becca. And I can't believe, I know we talked after 2019, but so much has happened in your life, so much opportunity since you jumped in that it's like we just talked about before the show. It's Diana 2.0. It's amazing to me. So let's start out with back us up. Give us a little bit of insight for those that have not seen the first show. And by the way, if you want to get a catch up, Sadie's going to put that show into the chat so you can catch the first show after this one. How did it all start?
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. And thank you, Sadie, for facilitating. And thank you to everyone joining us here this Wednesday morning. I am Diana Bernal. And as Lori said, I am an executive coach. I'm a speaker, and I'm the author of the new book, Career with Intention. And I did have a lot of what ifs, which is also what prompted me to write the book for other people, because there's a difference between that what if, like when you go on vacation and you have a great time and you're like, oh, I want to move to Costa Rica, or oh, I want to open a bar. That's a one-off one if, right? But it's the ideas that keep coming back to us one year after another, and they never quite go away, but we don't quite act on them. So I was very lucky. In my young 20s, I was in Chicago. I'd graduated college, and I was working in human resources, which at the time was something that I kind of fell into, but it wasn't the end all be all. And I was looking for new jobs, and I wasn't taking any of the offers I was getting from big companies in the Midwest. And it was a friend who said, you know, maybe you're applying to the wrong jobs. So that's a note. If other people are giving you advice and it resonates, it's something that you might want to follow or look into at least. She had just gone through a career workshop. And, you know, here I was, this first generation kid, my parents were union workers. I was the first to go to college. I was figuring out everything on my own. So I finished college and said, I'm going to have this career and I'm going to keep moving forward. I didn't know that one could stop and assess and perhaps pivot, perhaps do something a little differently. So it was sitting through this career workshop that my eyes were opened, that there are so many different ways to apply my business skills that align with my personality. And it was through that process then that I moved from human resources into fundraising. And that was very successful because then I was plucked out of Chicago and moved to Los Angeles for my company at the time. And so I had this 20-year successful career in fundraising. And I was kind of evangelical about career fulfillment. You know, I was like a former smoker, you know, who didn't want anyone else to smoke. I was like, well, hey, you know, if you're not happy at work, you know, how can we fix it? You know, what else can you do? And, you know, I had always thought about how I could help other people. And when it was about 2004, I even had some girlfriends over to my apartment, and we had our journals and we sat around and we thought about ways, and I gave them advice like, well, how could you network here? Or who else can you have an informational interview with? And I was excited. I was like, maybe I could be a career coach. Maybe I could help other women. Next month, I got pregnant. So that idea got put on ice for many years. And then when I was working at USC, I was still a fundraiser, but part of my role was working with all these other fundraising directors, helping them staff up, helping them navigate their challenges. And again, that advice kept coming up like, gee, Diana, you're really good at this. And people were coming to me for career advice. And it just wasn't a suggestion that kept coming up like, you're really good at this. Is this something you would want to do? And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll look into it. And sure enough, in 2019, I started a journal. And I was thinking about some new ideas. And I had put that journal down. And then I picked it up, realizing it was 3 years later. And all these ideas of how I might be self-employed and the different ways I could show up and help other people, I had just forgotten about them because I didn't create the momentum. And then it was finally when I read Brene Brown, Daring Greatly, when she talked about courage. And to me, courage had been something that I reserved for police officers, for the military, for people who go mountain climbing. And I didn't realize that showing up on this Zoom call takes courage. I didn't realize that, raising your hand in a meeting sometimes can take courage. So I needed to tap into my own courage to explore, to follow up on that what if, and to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's something that we talk a lot about with anyone making a change. There's going to be some discomfort. So fast forward to I finally figured it out. I started doing the side hustle. I got some momentum. I got paid. Not just by friends and family, by the way. You have to get paid from other people to validate your idea. And then I built my financial cushion and I went out on my own, and it's been almost 3 years. And
Wow.
so that's how I spend my time, executive coaching, working with a lot of people who have just been promoted. Maybe they just got a new job and they need help navigating these complex systems. They need help on working with their boss or working with the board of directors. So I work with a lot of fundraising directors, but others who have been promoted or have achieved a new position, and their boss has hired me to come in to help them be the most successful faster.
Here's a thought I have, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to word the question to the degree that you're going to understand what I'm talking about, but here we go. This was actually something that I thought about as you were speaking. Going back years ago, executive coaching had pretty much a narrow focus. How can I define my skills so an employer will hire me, and what employment do I want to go at, right? That kind of was the narrow thing because that's where we were all heading. We weren't all talking about self-employment. I'm talking about 20, 30 years ago, right? But today, executive coaching is actually able to explore so many different avenues, which you do: self-employment, starting a business, working for someone else, doing a little hybrid model, all of these different options. And what I've noticed is the person that you may be consulting with has different, I'm going to call it this word right now, and then I'll define it. I don't know if it's the right word, but I'm going to call it value for a second, or desires. I kind of want to call it desires. Back in our day, if we said, I want something that makes us happy, that brings my personality in it, people go, get a job, honey. That's what you do after work. Remember, okay. But today,
Yeah.
we're more like, well, let's find something that, and I loved what you said it. I wrote it down, took my business skills and matched my personality. So today's executive coach is almost more like a mentor, a self-reflection, a perspective, a desires, a goals, a lot more than it ever was before, which you fit that role beautifully. I'm going to let you take that in case any of what I said resonates. I think there's some advice in there too.
Yeah, and I think that's where experience comes into play. I do have well over 20 years. I don't even want to quantify my years of experience, but I have worked for companies large and small. I have worked for a lot of companies that were in growth mode or that needed to contract. So I feel like my sweet spot is being able to mentor or tailor my coaching to that person because I have seen quite a bit. And so it's always about, what are your goals? Right? So if the company is hiring me, the goal is to make that person more effective in whatever way it is that they were hired. And again, to make them more effective faster, to accelerate their success. So I make sure that I get a good understanding from the manager, where do you want this person to go? And then I work with that person to see, do you understand where they're having you go, and what are the gaps? What do we need to lean into for your strengths, and where do you need help? A lot of times it is advocacy. A lot of the times it is just confidence to speak up, or taking that courage to have a conversation with a coworker. I interact with a lot of directors who they're doing fine, but they have a tough time with a peer. And so I help them work through those scenarios and just really tailoring it based on my experience, because I have seen it all. I've been through it all. I've had tough conversations. I have made a slew of mistakes. So I can help prevent, hopefully, some of those mistakes from other people. That way they get to their success a little faster.
I say this all the time. Yeah, new intelligence, more intelligence, wonderful. But what I look for is wisdom. And that's what you're speaking about.
Yeah, and judgment. I think that's a word that you're going to start to hear a lot lately, because when we talk about AI, uh, accenting or enhancing our work, you still need the judgment. Like, I just plugged something into ChatGPT last week and it gave me some things, and I was like, three or four of these just are not applicable, or they weren't worded correctly. But I needed to have the judgment to say, no, that doesn't sound right. Whereas if you don't have that judgment, and sometimes, yes, it does come with experience, but either way, you have to specialize and use your judgment to use what the AI is giving you and use the tools and say, yes, we're going to use these AI tools and not these other ones. And someone just wrote discernment, and I think that's
Because they
perfect.
know, yeah, I saw that because Tara knows that's my word. Every single week, I'm talking about discernment, discernment on this show. Yeah, Tara, thank
Yeah.
you. I know you wrote it. I was like, you got it. You got my word. In fact, she knew right away. We talk about it a lot. In fact, we're going to go in.
Hmm.
I want to go back to another thing you said, and I want to talk about, here's my other word that I thought of, is horizon. I remember when I was younger, and it was almost like a thing that made me feel better. I'd be like at 18, 19, I was like, okay, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to get a career, then I'm going to have a and like you told your whole life story. And I was like, then I'm going to retire at 65. And you had your whole life story. Where now I think you kind of like look down the road, but you plan your life here, even your career, even what you're doing. I think that we can't speak so much down the horizon that we used to. And I don't think we ever really could, because the horizon changed a lot. But I think
Hmm.
our environment, the technology, the jobs, the opportunities, they're changing so fast. It's almost like career counseling's about what you're going to do next week. Now I exaggerated on that, but you see what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
How do you look at horizon now in planning for your career?
In one word, adaptability, which is a skill that makes you successful on the job, even if you're there for 5 or 10 years, or as you're trying to figure things out. There was a phrase that one of my old bosses liked to use, and I like it too. Think of things as now, next, later. Now, that can be a really broad span of time, or it can be this week, next month, and 6 months from now. You've got to focus on, what am I doing today, and really make sure that you are delivering on your work, but then always thinking about what is next. Because if you want to be, for instance, a supervisor, then do you have supervisory experience? How can you volunteer to manage a project or a team? That way you build up the experience for what is next. And then always being open to what is later. Do you have to go back for another degree or not? Or do you just need to keep building your network, which is essential, because you don't know what later holds. So if you think of your career or your work, your self-employed business in now, next, and later, and kind of always having just sort of a general guide as to what those things may be, but being willing to adapt along the way, then you can pivot as needed.
I had a friend one time, somebody asked me, like, are you going to do something like sometime? I don't even remember what the question was, right? But I answered in a way, and my friend, I didn't even know this about me, but she pointed out. So she said, well, you see, in Lori's world, there's now and not now.
Yeah, I mean, especially, yeah, as in accounting, that's very concrete. And sometimes we are in these crazy jobs where it's what I have to do right now in this next hour, and everything else is later. And that can be, but again, you have to have the judgment to know what is essential in this very moment, and then how much time do I need to be spending getting ready for that next thing.
So what I want to do now is, and I'm going to dance around it in many different ways, is I want to talk about, this show is about most of the people that's in the audience. They either are or want to be an entrepreneur, and that's kind of become the goal, right? But I think I'd like to break it down in many different ways. And one of the first one, and this is my personal belief, so you can comment on this. Although I think sometimes people get out of school and go right into entrepreneurship, that's absolutely happens. But I don't think
Hmm.
it's not always the best method. I think getting and learning on someone else's dime, being an employee, has such great benefit. So when you look at social media, the craze is really influencing, if I can use that word, influencers.
Hmm.
A lot of
Hmm.
people not even like, it's almost as if you get a job, you're failing, you should start your own company. I think we've lost the benefit of gaining some wisdom being an employee for a while, even if you just become a salesperson for a while and get comfortable and learn how to sell properly. So let's just talk about some of the things that you can do. You're fresh out of college, what have you, and you're deciding start your own company, get a job. What would you say to someone that says, I really want to own my own business someday, but maybe I should get a job first? How would you talk with that person, whatever age they are, Diana? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And it's such a great question because I've heard a lot of young people doing that, especially in the labor market right now. They're looking at their options and they're realizing I could take this job with a company and maybe get laid off 2 years from now, or maybe I could start my own, maybe develop my own app or develop my own service. So it really
Right.
depends. So I understand that. So I understand that desire. And I think we are seeing it more than we did 20 years ago. So it really depends on what your business is, what your niche is, what are the skills that you want to be using every day. I always think there's benefit from learning about the workplace. Now, if you were lucky enough in high school or in college to work, both of my teenage girls worked in high school. They worked throughout college and summers. So they have already learned a lot about customer service, people, bosses, bad bosses. They have a little bit of an understanding of the world of work. So I think that is a part of it, like what you come to the table with already. So if there is a certain industry that we'll keep going with apps and such, that might be something that you create with friends, and sure enough, you can give it a shot. But if you're interested in a certain industry, it might behoove you indeed to just try it out for a year and still keep developing your side hustle, keep developing your things on the side. Because if you work for a company, even for a year or two, first of all, you get paid, you get benefits, but you get a crash course in whatever that thing is. So, for instance, the restaurant business is a great example. A lot of people say they want to open up their own food truck or their own restaurant. You will never know what it's like until you are truly there. And there are so many people who tried being a chef and realized the 12-hour days, long nights, minimal pay in the beginning until you really hit that sweet spot, and then decided it was not for them. So if there is a way for you to test the waters, really being in it and having someone else pay you to train, if you think of it that way, I think then that is indeed helpful.
I remember this is, years ago too, but when I graduated with my MBA, one of the things I noticed from already being in the career, what I was doing, is
Mhm.
that I didn't have a full understanding of how bankers looked at the financials. I would have them come into the company and they were turning down the loans, and I'm like, they're seeing something. What is it? So I decided, and it was a on purpose decision, that I was going to go become a banker for a short period of time to get the behind the scenes look. And I was a banker for a commercial lender for about a year, and then went back in my company. I always knew I would, and it was invaluable. So sometimes jumping ship and going into a situation and coming back with that information in your little suitcase just definitely helps. Okay,
Yeah.
I may be in the wrong chapters of the book as I say this, okay? So you lead me, but because we were talking about get a job, start your own company, I thought it ties into, and I'm just going to call them out on what I remember you saying, but you've got a financial cushion and being self-employed as two of the major portions of your book. And I think we're right on the edge where this like ties in where our conversation's going. Let's get to the book. Let's get to those chapters. Let's get the book out, which is so cool. So what I wanted to do is let's talk about those chapters and then let's go back to the whole book thing because we're so on the edge. Those chapters, I think, are right there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's go for it. So the book is Career with Intention, and it is for anyone who is trying to figure out their next steps. And it's everything from mindset, like confidence and courage, to the practical strategies of networking and resume. And it actually has links to downloads for those who are looking for a full-time job and need some tips. But it does also talk to the person who wants to be self-employed. And one of the first things I talk about is the financial cushion. And that is so essential. We were always taught that we needed a 3 to 6 months financial cushion no matter what, because the company could get sold or you could have to pick up and move for another reason. Then that number moved. Remember, like Susie Orman, who was the financial guru, she moved it like to 6 to 9 months or even a year. And here in Los Angeles, any of you who have friends who are actors, a year's worth of rent. That's what they always heard. People in production and acting needed to have a year's worth of rent in the bank to give themselves a buffer for the ups and downs of those industries. But building that financial cushion is essential no matter what your next step is, because if you are looking for a full-time job, it helps you not settle. If you know that you can live on your savings for another 6 months, you can be a little pickier and choosier about the opportunities that you want to pursue and not settle and not be in the same boat a year from now. And yes, if you are trying to do a side hustle, you're going to need that financial cushion because it takes a good 2 to 3 years to establish yourself, to watch your business pivot, and to build up whatever audience or credibility or sales track record for it to be financially profitable. So the financial cushion is definitely something that is essential. And then I also talk about the side hustle itself.
Okay. Well, tell me about this side hustle. Let's talk about that because, I think that too many are just jumping full 100% in. And like I talked to you before the show, the amount I see people putting on their credit card, which is really because they're not making enough in the company and they're either using it to pay their personal bills or using it to pay company bills, not money it's not like they bought a piece of equipment they can sell. I mean, this is lost working capital money. And so there is a great advantage of doing the side hustle aspect. And let's talk about how one goes about it, because I'm guessing here, but I got to feel like somebody's got on their mind, I don't have enough time to do a job and a side hustle. I think that's probably a thought too. But jobs can be also negotiated. You take over. If I said to you, I don't have enough money, so I got to just jump into it because I don't have time to do both. What would you say to me?
Well, I would suggest that people only take on a side hustle if it's something that they know they're very interested in. Like, I wouldn't start a side hustle learning to bake if I don't know how to bake, if I don't know that that's my thing. I had always been the career coach to my friends on the side, so I knew that was something that I wanted to pursue. I also tell people that it is definitely a side hustle world. If you open the paper every week, and I mean, you open your app and you have your Google News, there's layoffs left and right. There's no more important time to at least start testing the waters on something outside of your 9 to 5 in case you find yourself in a position where your best option is going to be self-employed. So I would always encourage people to lean into whatever their interests are, their passions are, and see how that might evolve as a side hustle. And always test the waters while you are working. Have that full-time job, do this on the side, and then keep iterating. When I first started coaching, it was very narrow. It was job search. So now I do executive coaching to help people. I still do some career coaching, but it's more about helping directors be successful in their next steps. So you can see that it evolved. My original website was different. My offerings were different. What I charged has evolved. And so you have to keep iterating until you find the sweet spot of your offer and your pay to balance it out and to really even say, do I want to do this? I know plenty of people who bake and sell cookies or cakes on the side for graduations and baptisms and the quinceañeras and all that. but they don't want to do it as a full-time business. They don't want that to interfere with their enjoyment of baking. So that's okay too. Some people just do the side hustle to have a little bit of extra money for vacation or walking around money, but you won't know until you try. So I would suggest to people to focus on the things that you know you do well, where people come to you for help. So people coming to Lori for tax help, et cetera. People coming to me for career advice and job advice. And then test the waters. And you have to see, are people going to pay you to do this thing? And again, it's beyond friends and family. Of course, your friends and family are going to pay you to do something, or they're going to at least help you with the beginning of that side hustle. But what is it going to take to go beyond that? Only when strangers and referrals start to pay you do you know that you might be onto something. And then when Lori talks about your time and all the other things that you touch and do to bring that to life, you really have to track to see if it is indeed profitable.
It's so true. So many people think that their company is going to succeed overnight because they went within, I call it their circle, and they asked everybody within their circle, and they're like, this is a great idea. They don't realize what it takes to then grow outside of that circle. That's where it is. The first hurdle is to get outside that circle. Okay, we're going to bring up a very simple word, and you've said it a whole lot, and I'm going to do a twist on it. Very simple word. Back in the day, when we would say the word skills, that meant I was a typist, I was a machinist, I was this. Skills had almost like absolutely what you do. It was like attached to something that you got learned on, if I can use that expression. I remember this was early in my entrepreneurship, like in my 20s and 30s. I realized that when you go out in a company, you can get an understanding of what you're good at, and that can become what you sell. And like for me, I know that and I say this all the time, I speak, I consult, and I write. Now I can speak, consult, and write on any topic, but then I have topics I have expertise in, but I have a skill in those three things, right? And what it did, Diana, is it allowed me to apply and change my ways. I mean, I wasn't a tax person at one time. I didn't have any of this training. But when I understood that that's the core things I like to do, those, I could then grow. And I think that we were talking before, skills is almost like, are you good at customer service? Because that could be a competitive advantage nowadays. So here's where I'm thinking in this half-baked idea to go on the cookies and cakes, is that skills to me, and I'm making this up, Diana, but I feel like they got a new meaning today. They don't have that same old meaning they used to. And I think the meaning creates that adaptability you were speaking about. And I think we're going to find some skills that we didn't even pay attention to, like customer service, to be the defining competitive advantage. So that's why I picked a simple word, skills, because I think it's loaded. You run with it.
Yeah, let's go with that. And that's also where emotional intelligence comes in, because when we talk about skills today, you're right. It used to be, can you do accounting? Can you do tax prep, right? But today, skills can mean, are you a project manager? Are you someone who can be building community? Are you someone who really connects the dots? That's one of the phrases that I hear all the time when you listen to the CEOs, and especially the people at the tech companies. They want to assure us that we want people with emotional intelligence who can take all this data. Great, you have the AI, it's running the research. What is the story that the data is trying to tell you? So being able to then phrase the results that you've had. So maybe you are good at data analysis, so that way you can make projections. You can apply your skills in different places. You can be a project manager at a tech company, at a real estate company, or in sports, right? So you've got to be able to phrase then whatever those skills are in an applicable way. And when I do tell people, whether they are applying for a job or trying to build their side hustle, you might have to have 2 or 3 different ways of phrasing it, especially for a resume, to make sure that you're appealing to whoever is reading it. But I like what you just did there. You write, you speak, you consult. And if I had to do it, I would say the same thing. I speak, I write, and I coach. Like, those are the 3 things I do. It's where I do it and how I do it, and then how I charge for it.
Yeah, and what I was able then to do is change them into marketing words so people understand: speaker, consultant, writer. So I was And it just really was a way of changing the way that I looked at things. And I think I want to go back to what you were saying with data. I just wrote it down. So what is the story that the data is saying? I want to tie this in with our discernment and AI. I don't believe, okay, ready? I'm going to phrase this. I'm like getting in my head.
Okay.
I don't believe AI is going to replace intelligent, awake humans who have discernment and the ability to make judgment and reason, because AI is still data points and somebody has to figure out what is the data saying. And that does require certain things that humans have: emotions. We sense things, we sense trends that are not in data, that we just get a gut feeling like something's not adding up here. And I actually had a conversation with AI about that. And it was interesting. Yes, I did, because I have these really deep conversations with AI, not like you think, where I'm like asking AI to teach me about AI to get behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And it came out that, well, we can't, AI was saying, well, we don't have those human senses that pick up new ideas and pick up in intuition and notice things are incorrect. We can only do what I found out is called next token probability. Token's a word. So it calculates the next probability of a sentence or something based on all its input, right? So let me go full circle here. I think that in the future, this skills, this discernment, this judgment, all of these may be the defining skills of the future. The ability to sit back and, I'm going to say one word, think.
Absolutely. And I think someone just dropped that in the chat about the critical thinking, because
Oh, they
again,
did.
all this data and information is available to us, but what do you do with it? And don't forget, an AI chatbot or whatever LLM you're using, they've never been laid off. They don't know what it's like to search for a job. So they don't have the personal experience to apply to this problem solving the way that humans do. And I think it is the humans that are going to be able to then manage all this data or manage all these concepts. There's always going to be someone that has to decide. Like if you look at all these data centers that are popping up all over the country, it's got to be up to a human to negotiate with the local planning council. And it's up to a human to say, look, they just put the brakes on data centers in these 3 counties. We shouldn't go there. Even though the model is telling us that that's a great place for a data center, it might be, but we know that there is now pushback in the community, so we need to go someplace else. And so that's where the real life experience of a human can connect with the data that's available to you.
We're going to go and I got to tell you this because this was just so funny. So I have been working on building things, as many people know, right? And so I created this 8-foot cabinets in different bays to put into the van on an overhead, right? And I use AI a lot to say what nails, what glue, like this, right? And AI said to me, well, you should build this on the bench and then insert it in the van. And I was like really exhausted that day. I go, obviously, you are not a human, because how is one woman going to pick up an 8-foot cabinet, squeeze it through a sliding glass door on a van, and insert it? And it was so funny. Yes, you're correct in that data point. But that,
Yeah,
like,
right.
AI story. It's like I was like furious. I'm like, obviously you don't have legs and arms. Like I was furious on that. But that was my little laugh. Here's where I want to go next. So you're going to see where I'm going to tie this in. One of the biggest concerns that small businesses have across the board when they go out on their own is marketing themselves. You know where I'm going with this. So first of all, I want to talk about the book and the information you're going to share with us on the book. But let's go to being a solopreneur in corporate America, having to market yourself beyond your friends, family, and I always call them fools, right? That's the first step. I know how that's from my banking days. You get the money from
Oh,
friends,
that's
family.
great. Yeah.
So give us advice on what you experienced and what you know about going the marketing route. And when we're going to tie it into how many years later then you decided to do a book and what was the purpose, intent, and the experience. That's where we're going to go now. That's a whole lot, but let's go ahead and start that.
I'm going to launch in with a big word that still makes me cringe to this day, and that's vulnerability.
Oh,
Being
yeah.
open You
We
like
don't like
that?
that.
You like
We
that?
don't like that word at all. No, we don't like that word. No, it's a great one. I love that word. Absolutely. Let's talk about it.
Because you have to be willing to throw yourself out there and you have to be willing to get the feedback. And the only way you're going to get the feedback is if you make the post, if you do the podcast, if you write the article on Substack or whatever, to put yourself out there and to get feedback to see if people are attracted to what it is that you have to offer. And then so for me, I started out Job Talk Weekly. It was this very general job search, job advice podcast. And then I started to realize I was told I needed to specialize, I needed to find my niche, but I wanted to be, I wanted to be available to everyone. Like everyone needs job search advice. Yes, but a 22-year-old might want different advice than a 50-year-old, right? And so I then started to hone in and realize what is my secret? What do I have to offer? What's my experience that's most relevant? And that happened to be with a lot of fundraising directors and a lot of women. So why not then try to specialize? I have male clients, don't get me wrong, but then I start to market myself. I show up, I network in these communities with either fundraising directors or female executives. And then when they feel seen and heard, then they are drawn to me. And so that's how I then have to position myself. So the marketing takes time of how you, again, that positioning, like who am I can't remember the P's of marketing, your price, product, promotion, all those things. And it does take time, but you have to be willing to throw yourself out there and say, okay, this is working, this isn't, and keep pivoting and keep shaping it until you get to something that you think is, okay, this is really resonating and this is where I'm going on all cylinders. And this is where people are responding to me. And, I talked about even my website. So now this is Diana Inc. is the website that I have. It is already on like its second version. And I was just in there the other day playing with the language and I still have edits that I need to make to it, but it's getting there and it's being open to that feedback. And that's why I think the vulnerability is really essential for any business owner.
It is, and when you're speaking of vulnerability, now this is something, so much that I have come upon and I speak on is like 20, 30 years ago in my life, but I guess that was a very vulnerable time period. But back in the day, and most of you, I think, may know who Wayne Dyer is. He's been passed away for
Yeah.
some time, but most people know who Wayne Dyer is, right? Well, Wayne Dyer had like his first book out, Real Magic. And I just moved to LA and I got to go see Wayne Dyer, right? Well, there's this one thing he said, and it goes back to your vulnerability, and I'll never forget it. He said he just got his book and he said he went to the mailbox and he got two letters and he opened the letter and it said, "Your book's the greatest. I loved it." And he said he felt really good inside and he put the letter down and he opened the second one and basically said it was a piece of crap. They want their money back, right? And then he noticed how he felt really bad and he walked away from it and he realized that one letter made him feel great and that other letter made him feel bad, but basically he was not owning his emotions. But this is why I'm bringing up the story that I loved. In his story, he said he woke up the next morning, he took and wrote one letter, he made a photocopy of it and it sent it to both. So obviously you sit on the chair, what could you write it that would abide for both of these situations? I think it feeds to the vulnerability. He wrote, "You may be right." And
Yeah, that's true. And we have to be open. It's like, thank you for your feedback. And
yeah,
I'm sure there are, and that's why when we talk about services for people who are thinking about their business, there are 1,000 coaches in Pasadena. I have no doubt. But the person who's going to hire me, the company who's going to hire me, appeals or they find something in my offering appealing, and that's okay. Just like I look at all the different people who could have helped me with my website or all the different editors that could have helped me with my old podcast. I found the people that worked for me, and you too will find the people that work for you whenever it is that you have a product or especially the service, because that's a matter of personality and choice.
Yep. So let's launch into the book. What made you decide to write the book, and what was your experiences after you made that decision?
Oh my gosh. Well, because I'd always thought about it because I felt like I had these good frameworks and pieces of wisdom. And I also believe very strongly in the power of journaling. But I didn't want just a journal where people would just write and have a couple of prompts. I wanted to give them the information and the confidence and how to move past their own mindset. So it really is a combination of things. It's less than 200 pages, but I thought, let me put everything that I know about finding career success, about finding that sweet spot between your skills, your interests, and the right place. Because place is not something that we talk about as often as we should. Because when we graduate college, let's say you get hired by EY or McKinsey, they send you, they tell you where they're going to send you. So we walk around with this expectation or this understanding that I have to go where the job is. You can also go where it's exciting for you. You know the cities that are energizing to you. You know the environment, whether you want to work in a small place. Do you want to work with students? Do you want to work with musicians? Do you want to work with executives? And where you want to do that. And so I add place to a part of my Venn diagram, which is very much in there, the skills, the interests, and place, and help people end up with that sweet spot. So I started writing, and then a conference was coming up, and the conference got planned about 5 months in advance. And Marisa asked me to speak at this conference. I said, oh, I might have my book ready by then. Maybe I could give it away. She's like, no, you will sell it. I was like, okay, I'm getting ready to sell it. So again, listening to other people. So then I got busy. And as Lori might know, I was a self-publishing snob. I thought to be very credible that you needed to be tapped by Penguin and Random House to be authorized to speak and to write on a certain topic. And then I realized how long it would take with that process. And I might have the most brilliant book in the world, but if that editor, if that literary agent is not into that day, I'm not going to have any success. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and publish this book as a tool. And yes, it's got great information on it, but it spreads the word about Diana. It gives me a certain authority and credibility when I go to speaking engagements. When I pitch myself for articles and podcasts, it's she is the author of Career with Intention. So it makes me interesting. So I leave that with a lot of people. Like, I don't expect to, I mean, there are people who have had self-publishing success and sold $1 million or made $1 million. For me, this is a tool that's going to pay for itself because I did hire a designer, and I know you want to talk a little bit more about the specifics, but I made the choice that I'm going to self-publish so that I had something that would be helpful to people and that I could use as a marketing tool.
And I can't even know how long ago, but I self-published several finance books, right? And
Mhm.
in fact, I'm just getting ready to take them down and revamp and put up some more. But they have been instrumental over the years in not only building credibility, but I would have my webinars, then people would buy my books. When I was a professor, they bought the book. So it really does pay off. Even if, I guess the point I'm saying that you mentioned, even if you don't look at it like, oh, suddenly everybody's going to buy the books, I can't imagine the amount of credibility and the jobs and projects I got because I had something in writing people could refer to. So I think never underestimate the power of a book as a tool, even if it isn't on some bestseller or you don't sell X amount of copies. I think it really has a benefit to it. I do. But I
Yeah.
think also, and let's talk about the process. So you were starting to say, and I learned a little bit of that, but this is so long ago that the environment has changed so much since I first did
Yeah.
mine. So say somebody says, I'm going to write a book. I think I'm going to self-publish. Obviously, they can decide hardcover or ebook, but it's beyond that because now there's so many people playing in that game. And at the end of the day, marketing still plays a lot into it. And that's all I'm going to say as a skeleton. Let's advise people, why should you write a book? Who should write a book? And then the process you learned about getting it out there.
Yeah, who should write a book is anyone who feels that they have something unique to say and that it would have value to them and value to you as a tool. And the marketing piece, that was extraordinary to me when I started doing research, learning that, yeah, let's say if you are so lucky that Random House says we're going to publish your book, that doesn't mean that they're going to spend a lot of money promoting it. So many women talked about how they spent tens of thousands of dollars promoting their book. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to have to do that, I got plenty of networking groups and clubs that I'm a part of. I can promote my own book. And then there's this hybrid version that I'm not fully equipped to speak at it because I didn't explore it enough. But I know a woman who did hybrid for her book, and it was sort of like it's memoirish, but it's also like reflective of, work culture and things like that for women in society. But, she spent thousands of dollars. I know she didn't sell thousands of books. So I'm having a tough time seeing this hybrid where you pay a publisher to get you into certain stores, because right now I have 3 bookstores that are interested in having me come and do a Q&A session and talk about career advice and the book. So it's on Amazon and people are buying it, not just my friends. So for me, I settled on the self-publishing. And, here's the thing. The publishing industry needs to be disrupted so badly. I mean, it really is this extraordinary gatekeeping bottleneck system based in New York City, run by this small group of publishers. And it's really hard for people of color to get in there and to break in. And it's hard for original voices. One of the things that people will tell you if you're writing fiction, especially, is to read what's out there, because you want to know what the trends are and what people are writing. And I picked up a few books because I do have some fiction ideas in my mind. And I picked up 2 books and I didn't even finish them. I thought they were so bad. But that's an example that these books were published. Someone said, we're going to publish these 2, authors, and I was not impressed at all. So it is a bit of a racket, and I just didn't want to be a part of it.
It reminds me of the music industry too. It's like they determine what the audience wants to hear or read. And I'm seeing that you're right. I picked up some books recently that were published and supposed to be great, and I didn't even want to waste my time finishing them. And
Yeah.
I love self-publishing. And one of the things that I want to point out that you said is that a lot of people don't realize you're still doing your own marketing. Even when you get a publisher, you're still doing the marketing stuff. So you might as well
Yeah.
do the own. And if you're using it as a tool to get you in front of clients, as you were talking about the bookstore, how great you're in front of people that are interested in what you do, hearing about your
Yeah.
book. You're going to walk away with some clients out of that, guaranteed. So it's really a great tool if you set it up in your mindset from that. Why did you choose to go hard copy versus ebook? What's the thoughts on that? Because I know it's a big question a lot of people ask.
Because mine really is a workbook. I mean, it has journal pages, write it out, write it out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I didn't do E. So there are exercises, because like, let's say I talk about finding inspiration. Boom. I want you to be able to write it down in the moment and then be able to come back to it. So for me, that was really important. So there's not even an E version.
Now, how long has the book been out? How many months now?
Oh, not even a month.
That's what I thought. I thought it was rather new, but you're already seeing a difference in your ability to utilize it to help you in whichever way. You're already finding opportunity for it to be supportive of you.
Yes. And so the quick FYI, I know we're running quick on time, is that I went through Amazon KDP, and I know a lot of people hate Amazon, and quite honestly, I hate it too, but they are the big vendor on the block, and it's so easy. I hired a designer because I was not going to sit through and try and PDF my way to success here. She helped me design the cover, which is a whole process. She helped do the layout in the inside, and then she loaded it up to Amazon KDP. So you can find people like that on Upwork very easily, and I was very pleased that I did that. And then it's up to you to get it out there. And so there is a company called Ingram Spark. Again, all these different, not restrictions, but just the way the publishing industry is. If you want to be in independent bookstores, then you have to make sure your book is available through a company called Ingram Spark. And so that's what I've done now to make sure that right now you can go to Amazon, you can type in Career with Intention, and you can buy it. Or when it's available through the independent bookstores, if they have like they have me and I do a book signing, they can purchase it and they can sell it as well. And then there's all these things that people do. And I didn't do a lot of this, like send out free copies and pay for reviews. I am not paying for reviews. People do that. So when you see a book that comes out June 1st and it's already got like 500 sales and all these reviews, it's because a lot of people were working behind the scenes to get people to do that. And who knows if they really cared and if they really bought it. Mine are actual verified purchases, and I feel good about that.
And I like him. I understand why people don't like Amazon. I just, I give them a lot of credit because they get it right. They get it right with their customer service. They get it right with their deliveries, and they get it right with their book sales because their system is really, I'm talking about like having a book up for sale on their system. It's very easy to use. You got to follow with the
Yeah.
format. But it's easy and their dashboard's easy to keep up on things. But the thing to know is unless you get the people to go to Amazon, you're not naturally necessarily going to get in the search. You really have to do the marketing outside of Amazon and think of Amazon almost like a bookshelf that people are got to go to it. They're looking for it and then they take it off the bookshelf from Amazon versus find it so much on Amazon. Then I think you got a winner on that. I know, and
Yeah.
someday I always say that, in my retirement, someday, whenever this is, I want to write a good fiction novel. I got a fiction novel
Please do.
Yeah, someday I definitely do. So where do you see your business going? Are you thinking that you're going to stay more with the corporate executive coaching? What's your not now and now horizon that you're looking at?
Yeah, a lot of public speaking has come on my radar, and I do really enjoy that. So I'm waiting to hear on some conferences that I'm talking to people about this fall. I would love to have a combination of public speaking and then continue the executive coaching. The executive coaching is limited because one can't do that 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. So I only take on so many clients there. And then just sort of being open to see what is the next step. Is it a women's retreat? Is it, a women's cohort that gets together every once in a while? I'm really trying to flesh out what 3.0 looks like.
I got a really interesting question. Not even sure where to go from it. When we look at the buyers, we've been talking about getting into business, being in, a corporation, buyers. Today's buyer, just cross the board. I feel like today's buyer has changed so much, whether they want things more digital, whether they want things. I'm just trying to, every time I ask somebody, what do you think today's buyer has changed and what do we have to think about? And where I want to bring this up with you, and we talked about it a little bit, but I really think it's so key, the desire to have customer service. So I want to talk about the buyers that I believe the sellers. Now this is my personal opinion, Diana, so you take it from there. I think the sellers, let's call them corporate or whatever, even small, the sellers are got this belief that the buyers are all wanting self-automated, do it themselves. And I think the buyers are evolving to give me some damn customer service, please. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah. Well, this intersects beautifully with the AI conversation. So I'll use my business as an example, and hopefully y'all can apply this in whatever fields you're in. But if someone just wants general career help, they can go to any chatbot. They can go online. There's a bunch of free and very low cost places for that. It is cookie cutter. It is not personalized. It does not understand your unique concerns or fears, but you're going to get general advice. And is that going to be helpful? Well, for some people, that's going to be helpful to an extent. So where I come in is the unique expertise. And that's where the coaching helps people accelerate. And that's where, people share with me their concerns and their frustrations. And so people who need and want expertise tailored to them, those are the ones who are going to buy. And that's when we talk about this AI marketplace. Again, people can go buy some quick hit or even free career advice. I come in for the people who are more experienced and want a more tailored feedback and someone to guide them through this process. That way they feel seen and heard and deliver on that. So that's when I think of whoever your buyer is. Do they want immediate because if they want immediate and quick and fast, that's going to be high churn. That's going to be something that they might be able to get online for free. What do you offer that is specialized, and you have a unique take on it, and you can really guide that person to your product and your service?
I think about this a lot. For years, we always heard find a problem and fix it, find a need and fix it as being
Yes.
a business. I think that down the road, we're going to find that, and I'm not against AI. People know I'm not a Luddite. I'm not against AI, but I think AI is creating inherent problems. It's creating problems with people following the wrong advice. Like when I talk about legal structures, I'm busy as can be getting people out of bad legal structures, out of bad tax. So I think AI is creating as many problems as it's creating a benefit. I'm just saying there's a little bit on both sides. And I think there can be business opportunities in solving AI's problem. And so when you have somebody that's gone through the AI, got career advice that doesn't fit for them, and they're still feeling frustrated, then your advice has value and they're willing to pay for it. That's where I'm going.
Yes, exactly. And Mark Cuban just posted something on LinkedIn a week or two ago, and he calls it domain knowledge. He was acknowledging that, look, we know that AI is imperfect. When the heads of Anthropic say, we really don't even understand how this thing works, let's be honest, they have acknowledged they're not 100% confident they know how the AI works. Then it's up to you to be that specialist to go in, like you said, all these people taking bad tax advice, bad legal advice, then need someone to help fix those things. So if you can be out ahead of them and make sure that they know that you're the go-to expert on whatever, then you got yourself a sweet spot.
Yeah, so I'm going to end on mine saying there's always opportunity out there. Get yourself a financial cushion and go for it. That's how I get to bring it all together. But we're down to, I knew the hour would go fast. Last word you'd like to leave with the audience, Diana?
Oh, really? Follow your curiosity. If there's something that you've been thinking about on and off for 5 years, just go check it out because you want to prevent regret. You don't want to retire at 65 and 70 and be like, gee, what if? What if I would have done this? What if I would have explored that? So go ahead and explore something. Doesn't mean that you have to do it. You might go work at a restaurant and be like, this is hard. I don't want to do this. But you know what? You won't have to worry about that regret. And I actually have an example of the book of a really good friend of mine. She did that. There was a certain thing that we all thought she would be good at. She had the opportunity to try it. She hated it. But now she knows she doesn't have to wonder what if. And that is the worst feeling, the wondering of what if on something that you could have tried.
It's so true. Life is about experiences, and a lot of it is trial and error until you find what fits. And that little voice that has a good idea for you, it doesn't go away. It keeps coming back and whispering over the years to you. So you pay attention to that little voice and you find a
That's
lot.
right. That's right.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to get Sadie back in here, but I just really appreciate it. And I'm going to have you come back on again. I love, people say this to me, and I never quite understand when they say it to me, but I love your energy. It just feels exciting and opportunity. And I could tell you're having so much fun out there. And that is really good to see.
Thank you. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I help other people find that sweet spot because I am having fun. And it is possible to have fun and get paid and go on vacation and do all the things. So thank you. It's my pleasure. And I hope people follow me on LinkedIn and, they can always message me if they have questions on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Sadie, hey, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
I mean, I knew like beforehand it was gonna be, but like, you know what it is? I feel happy is the only way I can describe it. Like I'm happy, I'm enthusiastic. And this is why I love the small biz community. I'm just like, yes, let's do this, people.
Let's have fun. Let's take our power back. Let's know our cost structure. Let's get out there and let's rule the world and have fun. So
and that's why I want people to take control of their career before corporate America does it for you.
It's so true because you know what? Everything starts with finance. It really does. I hate to say it, but we're one big monopoly game on planet Earth. And if you don't have the monopoly game together, you're not going to be happy in the other areas of life. I once heard it said, and I think it was a country song, if I'm not mistaken, but, money may not buy happiness, but it buys comfort. I think the country song was money may not buy you happiness, but it sure as blank beats being broke. That was the country song.
Well, and that's fine. And this is just a quick reframing for anyone who's like, you know what, Diana, I'm an accountant, I work at a bank, and it may not be the most exciting job, but it pays the bills. Then you embrace that position. Look at the benefits, look at the security, look at the camaraderie of hopefully some of the work friends you have. And then you embrace that, like, yes, this job is allowing me to go hiking on the weekend. This job is giving me the great health care so that I can go and do all these things. So even if we're at a situation at work where we're not 100% thrilled, how can you focus on what it is that that job is giving you that nobody else is giving you right now, and at least take comfort and satisfaction in that? And then, I can't be a ballerina anymore, but I can certainly go to the ballet on weekends. I can certainly watch it and then live my own life because this job is indeed supporting me, like I think some of our folks have here with 20 or 30 years of experience.
It's like your personal story. How can you write there is no story
Yeah.
for everybody. There's your personal story, your personal life. We go on and on. So I guess I have to end the show. So my frequent flyers that are here every single week, thank you for being here. And if you were new to the show, tune in next week for Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Thank you, Diana. Great to see you. Thank you, Sadie. Sadie's going to stay behind. Be sure to get Diana's information, her social media, her book, everything about it. And I will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
Lori.
you. Bye, everyone.
Alrighty, guys. Well, if this is your first time, I hang out a little bit afterwards just to make sure you're able to click on all the links because I know once the Zoom shuts down, you're not able to, access the information anymore. So, no worries. I'm going to drop down Diana's information in there again because lots of good links to click on there, even for her past show. So here's all the Diana information. I put Lori's information in there. If you're not yet a client of the SBDC, please become a client. It is no cost service. And as you see, we have the best subject matter experts in the field, I personally believe, at our LA Lead Center. So please reach out, no cost. Get your one-on-one appointment. It's only going to make your life better, as Diana says. So on that note, I'm going to put myself on mute. Have a wonderful day and let me know if you need anything that's not in the chat.